Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. So the films I finally watched are Claude Berri's Jean de Florette and Manon de Source from 1986-87. The only other Claude Berri film that I've seen is the Radiance release of Chow Pantin, which is absolutely fantastic. One of the really underrated Radiance releases, but it's an absolutely fabulous film. And these two films do remind one of the immigrants in the new land. Completely different kind of films, but they just reminded me of this, a wonderful quadruple bill, if you're that way inclined. So these films star Gérard Depardieu, Emmanuel Berthe as the two title characters. Depardieu is Jean de Florette, and Emmanuel Berthe is Manon de Source. They're PGs, so you think, oh yeah, Emmanuel Berthe won't take her clothes off, but she does take her clothes off. Nothing can stop her. Also co-starring the wonderful Yves Montand and Daniel Auteuil. Jean de Florette, the first film, and Manon de Source, the second. This is in the World Cinema collection from Umbrella. And first of all, I have to say, yes, Criterion are releasing this on 4K quite soon, or it might actually be out. But this Blu-ray looks absolutely stunning. These are films that make you want to move to the French countryside in the 1920s. So I'm not sure how much better the 4Ks will look. This is 2015 restorations of the films, and as I said, it looks absolutely gorgeous. These are films about family. These are films about greed and pride and hubris. Wonderful performances based on a novel. Even though Auteuil won awards for his portrayal of the somewhat simple character who's the nephew of Yves Montand, it's really Yves Montand's swan song. He did die, I think, 4 years later, quite sadly. Gérard Depardieu is in the first one, Emmanuel Berthe is in the second one. It's really one big film essentially. The second one just follows on. Well, a little bit time has elapsed. Granted, the Criterion probably has more special features. You just get the trailers on the Umbrella release, so I'm not actually sure what extras you get on the Criterion. But as I said, the picture quality in this is just absolutely gorgeous. So it's about two families. It's also a kind of low-key film about the effects of war. It's about miscommunication as part of the film, as well as we find out in the denouement of the piece. It also begs the question, you know, how much is enough? So Montand comes from a famous rich family. He's got pots of gold hidden, but he doesn't have an heir, and perhaps the name might die out. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Gérard Depardieu, who's a hunchback from the city, who's married to another family and takes over the land, which isn't as good as Yves Montand's land. And Yves Montand sees a chance to have Gerard Depardieu fail and then he can buy the farm on the cheap, because Manon and Auteuil have done something that may preclude Depardieu from being a success. You know, I'm not a huge Depardieu fan, but he's excellent in this film. Everybody is, even from the smaller characters in the local village, whose lives are run by water, which takes on a huge kind of consequence in the second film. You know, obviously water is a symbol of life, and we are in the strange kind of position where when it rains, which is obviously quite important to crops, it doesn't necessarily rain on the bit of land that you want it to rain on, which obviously has effects itself. I mean, I will say the first film for me is slightly better than the second film. I think the first film's absolutely brilliant, and the second film is still very good, but it doesn't have that kind of riveting, addictive quality as the first film does. They're both, one's a tick over 2 hours, one's a little bit under 2 hours. I didn't watch them back to back. I watched the first one, strangely enough, of an evening, and then watched the second one of a morning. But you could easily just sit and watch them in one go, because they are ridiculously watchable, as a bad critic's quote on the side of a bus might say. You do get a real sense of time set in the 1920s in Provence, and again, as I said, you just want to move to France and live in the countryside after this. But it doesn't shy away from the harsh summers, as I said, the need for water. It's really a film about the almost the 7 deadly sins of human nature: the greed, the pride, the hubris. Depardieu, or Jean de Florette, gets his information from manuals. He's got an inheritance, so he spends all this money on manuals and equipment and trying to master the land. He has some successes and some failures. I didn't realise that certainly the first film, there's a lot of humour that is actually quite funny in places. The second film, which follows Manon, who's Emmanuel Bert, or Béart, who is Gerard Depardieu's daughter, all grown up, and she has become a shepherdess, a wild young woman of the hills, who, as I said, does get naked, and for some reason men take a liking to her. The relationships, obviously, between Daniel Auteuil and Yves Montand, who usually plays fairly decent, noble characters. He is a scumbag in this, but because it's Yves Montand, you still like him, and he has a wonderful arc, because by the time the second half, or the second film, he is a bit older. He's looking for an heir, and obviously is pushing Auteuil, who again is not the smartest tulip in the bunch, to perhaps try his luck with Manon. Yeah, good luck with that. There's also a student who appears in the second film, who's about kind of studying the land and the soil. The villagers kind of almost form a kind of Greek chorus. So you get nice bits of exposition which are just given under the guise of banter in the local bar slash restaurant, so it never feels like it's an exposition dump. Monton's pride and arrogance means he never actually speaks to Depardieu or gets to know Depardieu. He always sends Daniel Auteuil's character to do his bidding. And again, the film's about class as well, how the rich always want to get richer. And you've got Gerard Depardieu, who obviously wants to make money and make a success for himself and his wife and daughter. There's a wonderful section where he wants to make rabbits, sell rabbits for meat, but obviously not how it went down in Australia. So we have a wonderful conversation between him and Daniel Auteuil about the multiplication of rabbits. I mean, it's just, they're two wonderful films. For some reason, in my past life, I thought they were both like 4 hours long or something. But it's like 4 hours in total. But again, you're so invested in the characters that the time just flies by. You get gorgeous scenery as well. There's wonderful donkey and mule action in the film. Some nice rabbit action too. You can kind of also see, as you know, almost the history of irrigation happening before your eyes, as again water is the focal point of the film. The praying for rain. There's also a nice kind of little satire on the power of prayer and God. The second half of the film, you know, there's a miracle, but of course it's not really a miracle, because things tend to happen not for spiritual reasons, but kind of physical scientific reasons. Again, I can't talk about the plot too much, but there's twists and turns that are quite wonderful as far as the ending of the film is concerned. I kind of do have, there's a lot in Daniel Auteuil's character that I can kind of identify with. And again, he did get awards, because apparently you get more awards if you play a character that's a bit slow. But Manon is just wonderful, like all great actors. He uses his eyes very well. Here's a guy that's always in control. He can always figure the situation out a couple of steps ahead of everybody else. And he's just absolutely fantastic. I doubt this was his last film or last films, but it's a wonderful kind of swan song, and kind of the antithesis of the kind of roles he would usually play, whether it's, you know, judges or policemen or things like that, because he is a conniving, money grabbing swine in this. But again, because it's Manon, you still like him and you're still not necessarily on his side, but you're still invested in his character, as you are in everybody's character. Again, as I said, I can't go into too much of the plot, but they're just two wonderful, wonderful films. And again, if you can get your hands on this, again, I picked this up as part of the Umbrella haul. So part of that was buy one get one free, so I think I got this for free. But as I said, Criterion are either releasing the 4K quite soon or it's just out. But as I said, this is absolutely stunning, the print on this anyway, because it's a 2015 restoration. So thanks very much for watching this video on me finally watching two French classics. I mean, I was planning to watch more Claude Berri after To Chow Pantin, which is fantastic. So these are both absolutely wonderful. As I said, the first one's probably a 5-star for me, and the second one is a 4. So we're talking excellent films with excellent characters. And as I say, it is a low-key film about the effects of war on families, which really takes centre stage near the end of the film. So as I said, thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen Jean de Florette and Manon de Source. I know most of you have, due to the comments on my Umbrella Sale haul video, and hopefully you'll join me again as I get around to watching films that I should have watched decades ago. So this is Saoirse Ronan from Saoirse Ronan Films saying farewell.